Number 15. The Fallen Diver. At first glance, the photo seems to be fairly normal. A few divers who are casually enjoying their time underwater, and it looks as though everyone is having a good time. But, in the background, a diver can be seen laying on the ocean floor apart from the other divers. What most people don't realize about the photo is that the diver in the background is actually a murder victim who had been killed in the ocean days before the divers in the photo decided to swim in that specific location. According to authorities, a man had murdered his wife, thinking that no one would find her at the bottom of the ocean. During the court trials, it was first declared an accident. However, later evidence revealed that the husband had murdered his wife, allowing authorities to mark it as a homicide. What the husband obviously didn't anticipate was the possibility of divers catching it on film. While this photo isn't terrifying by itself, sometimes the backstory offers more terror than anticipated. There are many photos that have been captured around the world, such as murder victims, or even a killer on the run, that sent shivers down our spines. Number 14. Trees of Spiders. There is certainly no shortage of fear in the world when it comes to spiders. However, these trees in Pakistan surely take the cake. In 2010 a devastating flood occurred, leaving many locations of Pakistan flooded. Russell Watkins, a multimedia editor from the UK who was in the area, said, "It was a very slow-motion kind of disaster. Parts of Sindh, specifically, had this strange occurrence. Spiders that no longer found refuge on the ground, took to the trees and seemed to stay there. They ended up making nests in the leaves of the trees and didn't show signs of coming down. For the surviving locals in the area, they seemed to go on about their days, trying their best to avoid the spiders when possible. It was certainly a problem to everyone who encountered the trees, as the spiders could come jumping down from the trees at any time." Watkins also said, "Certainly, when we were there working, if you stood under one of these trees, dozens of small, very tiny spiders would just drop down onto your head. Although strange, and for some interesting, Sindh is certainly not the place to go if arachnophobia plays a part in your fears." Today, however, the spider population in the trees has decreased greatly, and things have slowly gone back to normal. Number 13. Freddy Krueger in the background. Most of us are familiar with famous horror movie characters such as Jason and Michael Myers, but the scariest of them all has always seemed to be Freddy Krueger. For those who do not know, Krueger is a character from the famous movie A Nightmare on Elm Street. Krueger terrorizes and tortures a group of teenagers because of their parents' past mistakes. His appearance consisted of a red and black striped long-sleeve shirt, a hat, and a long sharp metal glove. His face is completely burnt and splotchy. This photo looks eerie, but it appears to be just three children posing for a picture and looking up at the camera with joy, while the little girl to the left is looking in surprise. And there, in the background, is a man, standing creepily behind the children with an evil-looking grin. The scariest thing about this photo is the man who looks so much like the famous character Freddy Krueger. His creepy smile, along with his lean posture, could send chills down anyone's back. One of the facts that make this photo so creepy is that it was taken long before the movie A Nightmare on Elm Street came out. Number 12. The Man in the Window. Imagine yourself walking up to a street post in the middle of the city. You see a small, white piece of paper with writing on it, and a strange orange clay head above the note. As you read it, you start to think the note doesn't make any sense, until you finish it. Once finished, the fright that creeps upon you is imminent, for the words of the note are stuck in your mind forever. That seems to be the case with this photo, its origin still remaining unknown. And if the photo doesn't strike you as creepy, it is certainly unsettling to say the least. The words printed on the note read, "Notice. While you are reading this, there is a man in one of the windows high above you who is taking your photograph. He will then make a Wii model of you and put it with other Wii models of other people. Then, he plays weird games with them. While the note was probably made solely to strike fear into people who are making their way down the street during the day, the lingering wonder still exists in the back of your mind, that maybe, what the note is saying is true." Number 11. An Imaginary Friend. This is a drawing done by a little girl who wanted someone to know that she has an imaginary friend, but her parents aren't able to see her. The little girl explains on the drawing, "This is Lisa. She is my friend. My mom and dad can't see her, so they said she's an imaginary, sick friend. Lisa is a nice friend." Looking at the friend this little girl drew, it doesn't look as though Lisa is such a pleasant being. With red eyes, chest, mouth, and hand, it looks as though adorable Lisa has been up to no good. It has been a common occurrence, especially in the past few decades, for children who are very young, to form bonds with beings that adults will think are imaginary friends. Many spiritualists and mediums believe that some of these stories are about spirits who are attempting to make a connection with the child. In many cases, this doesn't serve as a problem to the parents or the children, but sometimes, when the spirit is believed to be very malevolent or trying to cause harm, there are measures that are taken to ensure a child's safety, as well as the parent's. Number 10. Possessed at the Red Box. Strange things happen every day, but some things are simply too weird to ignore. While not much is known all about this photo, something very strange appears to be occurring. The lady in the photo is taking a look at the movies in a red box kiosk and her head appears to be tilting back in a very unnatural way. It doesn't appear that anyone else is around, reacting to the strange happening, making quite a few skeptics wonder if the photo is fake. Many people have claimed that this is a photo of a girl becoming possessed while in public. However, the true origin of the photo, as well as the situation, have never been discovered or explained. One thing is for sure though, it is highly unlikely to have your head tilted back so far without injury. There have been a few people who have made comments about the photo, saying that it has been photoshopped, while others have agreed that the head cannot tilt back that far. However, the conclusion on whether or not the photo is real, is still out for debate. Skeptics and believers continue to try and figure out who this woman was and why she looked so strange on the footage. Number 9. The body from the ceiling. When it is time to take a family photo, there will almost always be smiles and laughter, or a group of frustrated individuals ready to get the photo over with. Unfortunately, sometimes situations take a turn for the worst and tend to go in another direction. For the family in the photo above, things went downhill in an instant. Just as the photographer snapped the photo, a body, which had been stored in the ceiling for quite some time, is seen falling down beside the family. While the moment was most likely terrifying for the family, the photo is equally as frightening. Normally family photos don't have this type of problem, and it is certainly not something to include on the Christmas cards. This is just one example of a body being captured on film. Most of the time, the occurrences happen with the body already in the picture and people have spotted it later. But, with this family, the occurrence happened right when the picture was snapped. One can imagine the horror and the terror that went through the family's mind as they moved quickly away from the body. Many skeptics have argued that the photo may be photoshopped. But, even with the proper testing, there is truly no way to say for sure. Number 8. The cult behind the wedding. Weddings. So many grand events come along in our lives that mark the beginning of something amazing, and weddings are one of the most popular. It is a big day, especially for the bride, who usually looks forward to the most grand of setups that money can buy. However, like the photo above displays, sometimes weddings do not always go as planned. As the happy couple is wed in the front of the building, behind them, on the other side of the wall are a group of people dressed up in outfits resembling a cult. They are all wearing very dark, brown robes with black pointed hats with giant flats on the side. They are all turned, watching the wedding as everyone on the other side appear to be oblivious. What is so scary about this photo is the people attending the wedding have no idea what is going on behind them, whatever that may be. With the rise in shootings these past few years, it is no wonder this picture would strike fear in anyone who has kept up with current events around the world. Terrible people, such as terrorists and radical individuals, have proven that a photo like this isn't to be taken lightly. Number 7. Human skin gloves. Among a wide collection of disturbing items, exists a set of skin gloves made from the skin of a human being. Ed Gein, who was known for many disturbing things, made these gloves, possibly without a thought to the victims. It is one thing to hear about the terrible acts of killers, but it is another to see a picture of the acts and items. Ed Gein was a terrible killer who killed and skinned multiple people. He was infamous and a terrible person altogether. His killings actually inspired a chain of movies that are still being made today, called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The first, which was released in 1974, was a huge hit with horror fans. But, this picture is just one disturbing example of the many terrible things Ed Gein did over the span of his life. What is so disturbing about this photo is the detail of the hands still left in the gloves. Close inspection reveals the fingerprints as well as the stained skin. Of course, this wasn't the only disturbing thing that Gein made out of skin. He also made lampshades and other items out of human bones. It paints an entirely new perspective on serial killers. Number 6. The scratches in an Auschwitz gas chamber. There is truly nothing scarier than knowing you're about to die. And that was the case when it came to many of the victims in Auschwitz. When the people were being led into the chambers, they thought it was for an entirely different purpose. However, these were actually gas chambers, and once they were in, there was no getting out. The picture above shows the tragic evidence of people scratching to get out as the gas surely took their lives. Just looking at the picture sends shivers down your spine as the realization sets in of what the victims of Auschwitz had to go through. In David A. Hackett's book, The Buchenwald Report, a 15-year-old recounted his horror story while in the camps, and it is truly terrifying, to say the least. They did not care that we were their countrymen. They beat us to save their own lives. In the camp it was well known that every transport was gassed after 6 months. I had been in the camp a month when the oldest transport was gassed. They took us immediately to the selection, at which the strongest men and women were sorted out. The remainder were gassed. Number 5. The Grinning Soldier. This photo was taken of a soldier who was shell-shocked after a sudden event while in the field. During World War I, many different soldiers experienced this disturbing psychological impact. After prolonged exposure to constant warfare and bombardment, soldiers would often lose their minds. In a sense, the soldiers of World War I were the first to experience shell shock. At first glance, he appears to be a smiling crazy man who just lost his mind. The glint in his eyes, along with the smiling row of teeth, is cold and creepy. His helmet is pushed to the side of his head and he appears to be becoming unhinged. The ominous feeling and energy that surrounds the photo is frightening and truly a sight for fear. Without the explanation, the man is simply mad with no hope of return. In 1916, a post was published that perfectly described the ordeal, one of the quotes from the post being, "The illusion was so complete that often the living would speak to the dead before they realized the true state of affairs." This picture is the perfect example that not everything is what it seems at first glance. In other words, one should never judge a book by its cover, or, in this case, a photo. Number 4. Their final embrace. Not many of us know what it means to face death inevitably in the face. Unfortunately, some of us are placed in this position without a choice, just as the two individuals in this photo have been. As this wind turbine is burning, the two people appear to be facing each other for the last time as they face the terror that is to come. There was nothing that could have been done, as the only exit had been blocked by the fire, leaving the two stranded on top, left with the terrible truth of death soon to come. This certainly isn't the first time that individuals have been caught on camera before a tragic disaster. During the terrorist attack on the Twin Towers on September 11, many different people lost their lives due to a tragic happening. There exists many videos and pictures of the ordeal, all spread throughout the internet. There are even phone calls by people that have been recorded as the building was going down. People had been talking to their loved ones just before they died. Also, 911 dispatchers were talking to many who perished in the building just before it collapsed, sending rubble and chaos down below. Number 3. A victim's last moments. Just looking at this picture, one can tell that something isn't right. The girl appears to be afraid of the photographer and backing away in fear. The photo was taken by Robert Ben Rhodes, a serial killer who kidnapped the young girl in the photo. Her name was Regina K. Walters, and unfortunately, she did not live to tell her tale. She was 14 years old and eventually killed by Robert. He also had other girls held captive as well. Robert kept them inside an 18-wheeler, which had a sort of torture chamber built into the back. Robert is believed to have had more than 50 victims, before finally being caught and apprehended in 1990. He was sent to prison and given life without parole, his main charge being murder. This is the last known photo of Regina after Robert cut her hair very short and made her dress up in heels and a black dress. It was taken inside of an abandoned barn, somewhere in Illinois. This photo is terrifying, to say the least, as no one should ever be made to feel like a victim. Unfortunately, it opens up the sad truth that some innocent people become victims, and are taken from us way too soon. Number 2. The Amityville Ghost Child. Even at first glance, this photo is very creepy. The child hiding just behind the staircase appears to be trying to get into the photo without being spotted too much. However, what makes this very famous photo so terrifying, is that the photo was taken within the walls of the famously haunted Amityville Horror House. The history behind this infamous home serves as a reminder to certain individuals that evil is very much alive, and it lives in the Amityville house. During the time of the photo, no children were present in the home, and the photographer did not see anyone behind the staircase at that time. The photo has often been called a fraud, but with its age and location, the photo is considered somewhat of a mystery. It was captured by a team of investigators. Among them, Ed and Lorraine Warren, two of the best-known paranormal investigators of the time. Ed, a demonologist, and his wife, Lorraine, who is clairvoyant, decided to check out the Amityville house in 1976. Not only did they capture this image, but Lorraine was known for being very weary of the house, stating she never wanted to go back into the haunted home. Number 1. The Hospital Demon. Sometimes, unexplained things happen, and there is nothing that anyone can do to change them. We try our best to oppose the unknown, but most of the time, if we don't understand something, we fear it. This terrifying photo is a still from a surveillance camera in a hospital. The still was taken shortly before the patient in the bed passed. Something sinister and black can be seen standing on the bed, leaning down towards the patient. The black figure is unsettling, as no one in the hospital knew this image can be found, with a caption below the picture stating, "This picture was taken of a nurse's viewing monitor." On the monitor, this black figure appeared standing on top of the patient who was lying in the bed. The patient died within a few hours of this figure appearing. It is commonly known that cameras and other devices can detect ghostly phenomenon, and when coming across something like this, it is very hard to ignore the presence of spirits which continue to exist all around us. Number 15. The Fallen Diver. At first glance, the photo seems to be fairly normal. A few divers who are casually enjoying their time underwater, and it looks as though everyone is having a good time. But, in the background, a diver can be seen laying on the ocean floor apart from the other divers. What most people don't realize about the photo is that the diver in the background is actually a murder victim who had been killed in the ocean days before the divers in the photo decided to swim in that specific location. According to authorities, a man had murdered his wife, thinking that no one would find her at the bottom of the ocean. During the court trials, it was first declared an accident. However, later evidence revealed that the husband had murdered his wife, allowing authorities to mark it as a homicide. What the husband obviously didn't anticipate was the possibility of divers catching it on film. While this photo isn't terrifying by itself, sometimes the backstory offers more terror than anticipated. There are many photos that have been captured around the world, such as murder victims, or even a killer on the run, that sent shivers down our spines. Number 14. Trees of Spiders. There is certainly no shortage of fear in the world when it comes to spiders. However, these trees in Pakistan surely take the cake. In 2010 a devastating flood occurred, leaving many locations of Pakistan flooded. Russell Watkins, a multimedia editor from the UK who was in the area, said, "It was a very slow-motion kind of disaster." Parts of Sindh, specifically, had this strange occurrence. Spiders that no longer found refuge on the ground, took to the trees and seemed to stay there. They ended up making nests in the leaves of the trees and didn't show signs of coming down. For the surviving locals in the area, they seemed to go on about their days, trying their best to avoid the spiders when possible. It was certainly a problem to everyone who encountered the trees, as the spiders could come jumping down from the trees at any time. Watkins also said, "Certainly, when we were there working, if you stood under one of these trees, dozens of small, very very tiny spiders would just drop down onto your head. Although strange, and for some interesting, Sind is certainly not the place to go if arachnophobia plays a part in your fears. Today, however, the spider population in the trees has decreased greatly, and things have slowly gone back to normal. Number 13. Freddy Krueger in the background. Most of us are familiar with famous horror movie characters such as Jason and Michael Myers, but the scariest of them all has always seemed to be Freddy Krueger. For those who do not know, Krueger is a character from the famous movie A Nightmare on Elm Street. Krueger terrorizes and tortures a group of teenagers because of their parents' past mistakes. His appearance consisted of a red and black striped long-sleeve shirt, a hat, and a long sharp metal glove. His face is completely burnt and splotchy. This photo looks eerie, but it appears to be just 3 children posing for a picture and looking up at the camera with joy, while the little girl to the left is